I just asked ChatGPT to figure out inflation for the last 5 years, and I was absolutely blown away by the results. I think you're going to find this interesting. And it sheds light on how you should be doing your investing going forward because things are not the way they used to be. So you've got to take care of this in your investments and how you handle your money. Here we go. So I went and asked ChatGPT, what was the rate of inflation for the last 5 years? And it wouldn't really give me an answer. So I had to kind of dig deep, like you have to do with ChatGPT. And I said, all right, tell me what the calculation was from the price of eggs in 2019 until the price of to the price of eggs in 2024. And so it went through and it came up with these formulas, and I'll show you right here. And it came up with eggs, we're up 84.5%. I said, okay, great. Now do the same thing for gas, do the same thing for coffee, do the same thing for rent, do the same thing for cars, used cars, new cars. And it came up with these different prices. So eggs have gone up 84.5% in 5 years, right? Gas is 37.7%. Coffee has gone up 46.4%. Rent has gone up 25.4%. And that's a big number. And so is a used car, 34%. And new cars have gone up like 28% as well. And so when you start to actually look at the data, nowhere on there do you see anything even remotely close to what the Fed is telling us is the real inflation rate. And I don't know about you, but I eat eggs, I use gas, I drink coffee, I pay rent or the equivalent of a mortgage, whatever. It's the same thing. I buy a car every once in a while, right? And I'm noticing that things are going up. And so I'm like, how much are they going up? Well, I know that the government doesn't tell us the truth most of the time. And why is that? Well, first of all, we're in an election year, so they're going to try to make it look as good as possible. Jerome Powell is out there telling us that we're at 3.1% or 4.2% or 5%. It ain't even close to that, everybody. We're getting hammered. When you talk about 45.6%, that's 9% a year over 5 years. And they've been trying to tame inflation, right? They've been doing everything they got, pulling out all the stops to try to tame inflation. And this is the best we get, is 9.1% a year. What does that mean for us? Well, I'll tell you what it means for you is it means that if we don't invest and make at least 9.12% a year, we're actually going backwards. Okay. It used to be 2%, 3%, things like that. Maybe those were closer to the real numbers. And that was when mortgages were, 2, 3, 4%. Now mortgages are 6, 7, 8, 9%. The price of housing is unaffordable for most people now. That's great if you own a house, I guess, but the house in value didn't increase. The dollar value decreased. So you've got to be getting 9% on your investments. If you're not, you're going backwards. Think about it. If you have $100,000, okay, in 2019, today you can only buy $55,000 worth of goods and services in those 2019 dollars. In other words, you've lost 45% of your purchasing power in 5 years. It's called fiat currency. Fiat currency debases. Well, they call it printing money. They don't actually print the money anymore. What they do is they lend it out into existence. And when they lend it out into existence, it starts to lose its value, right? Because if money is easy to get, if money's plentiful, if everybody just applying for unemployment or disability or whatever and getting free money, well, prices of things go up. That's basic laws of supply and demand. What that means is, I've got a bunch of extra money in my pocket, so I'm willing to pay a little bit more for something. Well, that causes inflation. So inflation is directly tied to printing money, directly tied to more money supply. It's called M2 money supply. The more that M2 money supply goes up, the less value your dollar has in your pocket. So you've got to spend it, because if you don't spend it, you lose the value. You lose 9.1% a year. Okay, we can argue that you're going to buy a lot fewer eggs than you're going to pay in rent, or you're going to, used cars are only 34% and eggs are high, whatever. Like I just chose a basket of goods that, I certainly use every day. I didn't cherry pick. I just said, look, I use eggs, gas, coffee, rent, and, drive a car. Like that's typical American person, typical worldwide person. All right. So if you're not getting 9% a year, that's almost 1% a month. Okay. Let's call it 0.75% a month. If you're not getting that in your investments, you're going backwards. In other words, if this goes on another 10 years, you're going to erode, 70, 80, 90% of your value of your dollar. In fact, if you look at the chart of what the dollar has lost since 1971. It's lost 95% of its value or more. If you look at the dollar going all the way back to the 20s, it's lost almost 100% of its value. So, if you had held on to that money and buried it in a mattress, it would lose its buying power. So you've got to be able to create investments that make at least 9.1% a year. I have programs that show you how to make 2 to 4% a month. But there are other ways to do it, and you've got to get on top of it. Otherwise, you are in a declining and spiraling system. We're spending $1 trillion every 90 days in extra money, and that gets taxed onto the deficit. That means interest goes up, the interest cost on the deficit goes up, which means more inflation. So they got to print more money to service the interest rate costs. But when they print more money, that creates more inflation. So they've got to print more money then to service those new interest rate costs. We're in a debt spiral. And so it's going to probably get worse over time. But don't listen to what they're telling you. They're telling you they're shooting for a 3% target. It's impossible now. It's impossible now. They have to print money, and you have to be able to have investments that allow you to stay ahead of that money printer. Otherwise, you're going to be going backwards. You like what I have to say here? Hit the like, subscribe, notification bell button, and you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to cashflowmachine.io/tips.